Hi, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Autumn Hamry. I'm the Field Marketing Manager here at Hyperproof, and I'll be getting us started. Our teams at SafeBase and Hyperproof are thrilled about our new partnership and are excited to talk to you all today about some key topics, including common challenges associated with compliance and security posture, how to transform your approach to security and save time by automating your compliance and security related tasks, how SafeBase and Hyperproof combined can transform your compliance programs, and how to increase customer trust and improve the customer experience. A bit of housekeeping points before we get started. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we welcome you to enter them into the Q&A box for our speakers to answer after the end of the presentation. If you are having any problems with audio or visuals during the event, please try leaving the presentation and re-entering. If this doesn't work, please let us know you're having trouble in the Q&A box. The event is being recorded and will be made available on demand on our Bright Talk channel after the event ends. And lastly, attendees will receive an email with a link to the on-demand event after the webinar airs. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Lisa Hall, CISO at SafeBase, and Kane McLattery, Hyperproof's Field CISO. Take it away, team.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Lisa. I am the CISO at SafeBase. I've been in the information security field for about 20 years. Most recently was the CISO at Color Health, and prior to that, headed security at PagerDuty.
Fantastic. And I'm Kane, the Field CISO for Hyperproof. I'm a senior member of the IEEE for my contributions in cybersecurity. And I've been doing this for about 30 years now. Prior to joining Hyperproof, I was a CISO at an A&D company before I moved on to doing executive advisory about cybersecurity and risk management for Fortune 500 Global 1,000 companies. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Hyperproof and SafeBase, why we're here today, how to evaluate your current state of sharing your organization's security stance with your customers and your supply chain, and then the goal of turning cybersecurity and compliance into a profit center before we discuss bringing it all together with an ecosystem. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, Hyperproof is a risk and compliance management platform that lets IT security and compliance teams really automate and scale their workflows without the problems associated with the hopping between multiple legacy platforms or, goodness knows, spreadsheets. Our platform helps teams get complete visibility into their organizational risks, streamline their audits, and really reduce their ever-growing compliance and audit workloads.
SafeBase is a trust center platform for friction-free security reviews. What does that mean? I'm sure you've all had the experience of evaluating a vendor's security posture prior to purchase, or on the flip side, you may have been the person responding to a security request, usually those long security questionnaire spreadsheets from a buyer. Having been in security for some time now, I've personally felt the struggle from both sides. SafeBase transforms how we communicate our security and trust posture to our buyers by building an easy to navigate, public-facing, self-serve platform for your buyers to find security resources they are looking for, ultimately expediting the security review process.
And I'm pretty sure throughout this presentation, Lisa and I are going to talk about some of those challenges associated with communicating trust. But first of all, I want us to talk about why we're really here today. And the reason you're here, at least the reason I hope that you're here in the audience, is because you're struggling with understanding your compliance and your risk posture. And you're probably having a hard time with answering your security reviews from your partners, from your vendors, from your customers. You know, your supply chain is very much in the cybersecurity zeitgeist right now. And you're probably wondering, like, are there platforms out there that actually could be used to solve both of these problems? So today we're going to talk about how to not only efficiently manage, but also really effectively communicate our security posture together. So if that's why we're here today, now, let's take a current state view of most organizations of how they're communicating or possibly struggling to communicate their security posture. Lisa?
Right. So speaking of that, you may be currently struggling with how you can showcase your organization's trustworthiness at scale. There's this out-of-date security review process flow that usually feels something like you're repeating yourself over and over, searching a knowledge base that feels out of date the minute it's updated. Every new buyer is a shotgun request from your sales team. We need this security review filled out yesterday. You can't track the return on investment for the compliance initiatives your team spends time on, or the sales your team actually contributes to closing. And you're wondering actually if anyone reads these 200 questionnaire SIG Light responses your team is spending so much time completing. But you worry because you know that if you don't demonstrate your security posture quickly and effectively, potential buyers will have a perceived lack of trust and confidence that you can protect their data.
Yeah, and really just thinking of this, we're recording this webinar right now on the last, well, it may have 30 or 31 days. Anyway, at the end of May, I never remember how many days there are in months. They all kind of blur, but we're getting towards the end of the second quarter. And something that I hope doesn't happen to anyone who's listening to this, but I suspect probably will, is your sales team is going to roll up and say, hey, look, we have this fantastic contract, and all we need to sign this is a SOC 2 attestation, or we need an ISO 27001 certification. Could you get that tomorrow? And they'll let you know this on like June 15th or June 18th, right before the end of the quarter. And the problem, of course, with that is that if you have deals that are contingent on external certifications or attestations that show up out of the blue, as Lisa said, shotgun requests, those can really imperil your business's opportunities to produce revenue or alternatively retain revenue. And so throughout today's webinar, we're going to be looking at some of the ways we can proactively solve that and also enable our sales teams to understand where our organizations respectively are from a compliance and attestation perspective. And last year, Hyperproof asked companies as a part of our 2024 IT benchmark survey about whether or not they'd been impacted by third-party events. 62% of our respondents said they had a supply chain disruption related to cybersecurity that affected their ability to deliver goods or services. 56% of respondents experienced data or privacy breach due to a third party, which was a 22% increase from a prior year's study. And the number of compliance violations related to organizations' third-party oversight came in at 28%. And most of those third-party incidents were related to data or privacy breaches and related supply chain disruptions, which is why there's right now just such a focus, such an intense scrutiny on supply chain risk. And that's coming forward in these questionnaires that we're all receiving and having to deal with. Lisa, talk to us a bit more on that.
Yeah, talking about that and just the time spent on manual processes, one of the underlining obstacles and pain points of this whole process is that collecting evidence to demonstrate your company's trustworthiness can be complex, time-consuming, and really it's just a grind. Actually, speaking of the Hyperproof 2024 IT benchmark survey, you all found that this is a continuing top challenge for companies in 2024. Still, 2024.
Yeah, it surprises me. And on that, we actually asked people, like, what are you spending your time on? Like, what are the time-consuming manual processes? And they could choose as many from this list as they wanted to choose. And what we found was companies are still struggling to just collect the data necessary to test their controls. And that took as much time as getting a continuous view of risks and compliance. And that was closely followed by data entry. Who would be like, who thought that was going to be a thing in 2024? That's just not fun. And then finally, it was tracking that compliance issues were remediated. And that really speaks to a fragmented internal view of compliance and security at companies. And honestly, if they're struggling to communicate internally, like if it's this hard to talk about security and compliance inside of their company, you can imagine that trying to talk to that, to take that message out to the market probably isn't going that well.
Yeah, this one really hits close to home for me. The fact that collecting the necessary data to test controls ranked higher than consistently applying controls across departments is pretty wild to me. I never would have guessed that. I've been through a lot of audits. I won't share all of my battle wounds here. I don't know if we have enough time, but just collecting evidence alone can be daunting. I'm sure I'm not the only person who spent way too long grabbing like screenshot after screenshot of AWS console for an audit or pulling long lists of PR requests to show reviews were done. I felt this pain.
Yeah, it's not fun, and it's not why we got into the business.
Yeah, this may be surprising, but security folks don't really love filling out security questionnaires. I know it's shocking. It's tedious. And like we mentioned previously, it creates tension because go-to-market teams often depend on the responses to those security questionnaires in order to move deals forward. For CISOs, the time spent answering inbound security questionnaires takes time and resources away from our teams that could instead be spent on initiatives that really move the business forward or building some cool security functionality. And these challenges don't shrink as our company grows or succeeds. Instead, they become more complex as we pursue new markets or interact with those enterprise customers. And the risk of not responding to security questionnaires is that your company could end up losing customers either by taking too long to respond or not responding effectively. So your prospects move forward with another company that has the ability to demonstrate that competence and that they can be trusted.
Yeah, and I just want to go back on something Lisa said there. This is like ultimately it becomes a problem for morale. And this is why a lot of people get into cybersecurity jobs and then don't stick around if this is what they do. Like if you're a person who's new to our profession and you show up and you're like, cool, I'm going to be defending the cybers and it's going to be neat and there'll be the matrix style graphics and there'll be like somebody wearing a hoodie because it turns out it's cold in data centers. And you find out what you're doing is you're filling out security questionnaires or you're taking screenshots and sending them to this audit team, whoever they are. Like very few people get up and go, I'm going to go respond to the auditors because that's cool. Or I'm going to respond to the 1600 question SIG questionnaire, which maybe I'm not even competently enabled to respond to, let alone the recipient is going to be able to interpret the responses. But we all need to do it because due diligence, right? I think that's not a narrative that really helps people feel good about their jobs. And if you think about it, take a step back, if you are dealing with an investigation or potential litigation, again, there's no way to manually handle that on an efficient basis. We really need to be scalable and consistent in our processes. And I'd say that security in GRC is becoming closer to the heart of business strategy. And this is unfortunate because it's not taught in business schools. It's not like somebody's out there getting an MBA and learning like, hey, your business is going to go through a period of growth and innovation, and then it's going to become a stable, consistent money-making machine. And then maybe you should do an engineering uplift to fix your cybersecurity defenses. Nobody gets that part of the class because it's just not there. And so when there's this massive marked increase in attention associated with supply chain, companies really struggle. And they struggle to, first of all, have adequate security practices, but then they struggle to communicate those outwards because this is just not something that business leaders who are outside of the field of cybersecurity are taught that this is a thing that they should do in the world. So I think we've probably covered enough about challenges. I mean, goodness knows we could tell some stories. Let's talk about changing the narrative, right? Because for too long, I'd say the cybersecurity and compliance teams have really treated these as kind of an unwanted cost center. You know, money goes in and tears go out. That's why we do compliance, right? It's something you don't want to do. It's not perceived as a competitive advantage. And I think that we can really start to change that narrative together because Hyperproof and SafeBase really allow companies to align their compliance and risk management with their broader business objectives. And that alignment can help companies use compliance and cybersecurity investment as a business enabler rather than just a cost center. And what we do is we handle the back end, Hyperproof handles the back end complexity of compliance and risk, and automating the bits that you need to get done without adding burdensome manual processes for your staff, which really protects the business and ensures operational integrity. SafeBase, on the other hand, really helps businesses with their business development and customer engagement by making it easier for the security process for prospects and for customers and for your longer supply chain to understand where you're coming from a security perspective.
Speaking of that, showcasing customer trust, it's the key to business success, right? It's the foundation on which our customer relationships and brand reputation are built. And it really starts with security. So showcasing your security posture with transparency demonstrates to your customers that you do what you say you do. I know it might sound out of character for security to be a profit center or revenue generating. We're usually viewed as solely a cost center. Our tools are expensive, our people are expensive. We're always asking for more. We need more of this to be secure. We need more of this to meet these standards and regulations. But the work we do solidly impacts customer trust and influences if a buyer chooses us or a competitor. I actually was at SafeBase. I was a customer before joining as a CISO, so I was a fan and a user of the product. And I remember how excited I was when when SafeBase did the Salesforce integration. It meant that I could directly tie the work that my trust team were doing to sales opportunities. I could see how often a customer went to our trust center and if they asked for a questionnaire after, or a lot of times the trust center was enough. By using the trust center platform, it gave me the visibility into what potential buyers, why they're going to my trust center. What are they clicking on? What are they downloading? What are they searching for that maybe I'm not doing? So if you've been through the vendor review process on either side, as a buyer or as a vendor, you've most likely felt this pain around this third-party review process in general. It amazes me how much this process is still manual, and so many companies, even fairly mature ones, I've ran into some in my life as CISOing, doing third-party reviews and annual reviews, and it's the same kind of thing over and over again. Um, the goal is to validate that a company is secure and can be trusted with our data and your customers' data. So first, how do we go about even asking for security info? Sometimes we're searching their websites, we're submitting that Zendesk ticket to their support team, maybe we're randomly hitting up their security at email. Why are we doing this so manually? Next, we have to, as intaking that, we have to vet that this is actually someone we want to share this information with. Is this a valid prospect? Is it a competitor? Okay, now we have to execute this NDA to make sure our data is safe, so we can legally share a good portion of this documentation, like audit reports, pen tests. So how do we do that traditionally? Email. Oh, now do we need to talk to the legal team also? And then how do we even share that information? Honestly, are we going back to email again? We're emailing SOC 2 reports back and forth to each other. How are we handling watermarks to make sure that the data isn't reshared? And then there's the ever daunting security questionnaires. What do we do with follow-up questions? How do we respond and track those? There's definitely been times I've had follow-up questions and it's going through the sales reps and it literally feels like playing telephone where I'm like, here's what you say to answer this question. And then they're giving me back what the customer is saying, and it's a mess. And finally, with all of this process, we're totally missing like any metrics. How many times were certain documents shared or viewed? Did that lead to a successful sale? With the manual process, we just really have no idea. The Trust Center removes that friction. That's the friction we're talking about. Potential buyers have an interactive portal to get the information they need when they need it. And on average, SafeBase customers see a 74% reduction in inbound security questionnaires. I know that sounds amazing. We all would just love that. And some even reported up to 98% reduction. So it really shows that having a place where people can find the information they need means that nobody really enjoys reviewing these security questionnaires, sending them or receiving them. So it's just a better way.
Yeah, something else just to bring up here is I run a private CISO roundtable, and we actually talked about security questionnaires a couple months ago. And the most interesting comment that came out, and it's kind of a self-evident comment if you think about it, is if you wait to get a security questionnaire, you're going to get a security questionnaire. And so if you can direct your sales teams, if you can direct your go-to-market team to tell prospects, to tell in renewals, hey, we've got a security questionnaire as part of that first or second conversation, it really will reduce the number of security questionnaires you get. Like there's some people out there, some companies out there that are just going to demand that you fill out their security questionnaire because of their market share or because of their size of their company. But for a lot of companies, it becomes an easy button for them to just go, oh, I can find all the information that I actually care about, review it myself, and move things faster rather than waiting for that laborious back and forth that Lisa was discussing there, which, yeah, that hits to home. But the other thing we do is at Hyperproof, we really automate those internal routine checks and evidence collection, and we integrate with the other IT systems companies have got, like AWS or Google Cloud or GitHub or I don't know, 70 or more others. And we really automate that data collection and management. And if you think about it, what am I talking about? I'm talking about API calls, right? Like sometime in the audit period of history, auditors forgot that you could just copy a file or you could get an API call, and it seemed like an easy problem to fix, right? Like if you can automate your control testing, which is really just get a screenshot and then verify, or get a PDF and then verify, hey, does the field that says yes still say yes? Cool. We don't need a human to be involved in that process. But if there is a control deficiency, we can then automatically, if a company's got something like Jira or Asana or whatnot, they can automatically request that those issues get fixed, which is then reducing that internal friction, that internal back and forth, while it's reducing the risks to your business. Or if you're, as I mentioned earlier, if you're dealing with an investigation post-breach, having a consistent evidence of your controls being operated is going to really reduce the amount of time your staff spends in evidence production and in responses to e-discovery, which means that your staff can actually spend their time on meaningful, actionable work like dealing with the data breach or perhaps spinning up additional security controls. And the other advantage of consistent collection of control operation is that it's going to allow for faster external audits, because we can now use evidence reuse, because a lot of these frameworks say the same thing, just using slightly different words. So with our crosswalking capabilities, it really allows businesses to achieve additional attestations and compete in new markets. One of our customers, met with her at RSA, shot a video, and she said that it saves them 1,100 hours per year in audit prep time. Just being able to reuse their evidence and being able to have it all in one location and have it correctly labeled. And it's substantially faster for them as well to evaluate new compliance requirements, because they can see how their controls are being operated. They can see which controls they have. They don't need to pay a consultancy to come in and do a gap analysis to figure out like, oh, which new controls do we need to have? Like they've got them all in one place. They can see how effectively they're being used, and then they can reuse that and do the delta themselves rather than spending time, effort on what honestly should be automated. So, final part of today's talk, we want to talk about how these solutions are kind of part of a larger ecosystem. And so what Hyperproof offers are some extensive capabilities for managing your compliance. Like I said, I think we support 102 frameworks, something like that. It's a lot, like your standards like SOC 2, ISO 27001, and PCI, but also things like TISAX, which my friend Eric at Hyperproof really likes for some reason, or StateRAND. But when we're running alongside SafeBase, companies don't just manage their compliance, but they can also transparently communicate their compliance status, which is really essential for maintaining and establishing new customer trust. But also you can start looking at the additional markets you could go into based on their external regulatory or legal requirements or attestations, without adding more staff, because we've got those built-in crosswalks. And SafeBase can communicate those success stories without committing additional staff time to this. And as we said earlier, some folks might be in disparate systems to track your risks, right? I've seen a lot of companies where risks are inconsistently managed throughout multiple systems, and our intent is to centralize your risk management by collecting and tracking your risks in Hyperproof's risk register, and then tracking your control operation of how effectively your controls are burning down those risks. And if you need, you can have multiple risk registers. Maybe you've got geospatial or geo-disparate locations, like you want to have a different risk register for the EU versus the United States versus Latin America, which really helps larger companies sort and prioritize their risks effectively. But the benefits is that we can now move past just risk management and have a clear dashboard for tracking changes over time to a company's risk portfolio and having effective conversations with executives about potential risks to the business.
Nice. You're just giving me like flashbacks of all the Excel spreadsheets I've ever worked in. We're trying to like map everything back and forth together and then updating it and seeing what was different last year. Risk management is always a fun one. I won't get into like all of the qualitative versus quantitative risk assessment approaches, but I feel like no matter what the approach, doing it manually, it always felt like just the finger in the air, like likelihood, impact, it varies depending on what stakeholder you're talking to and what their view of the business is. And it's really easy to miss controls in that broad environment where we have different control owners, different risk assessments, different control mapping to various parts of the business.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the related problem with that is collecting the evidence for our audits. That's also like usually a time suck because companies don't have a methodical approach or even an organization for managing the evidence associated with their audits. And Hyperproof allows you to ensure your evidence is always up to date by automating that evidence collection with what we call hypersinks. We've got 70 or more of them. And what we allow is for reuse of that evidence across multiple controls to satisfy those internal and external audit requests. But also, the proof is coming from a source system. It's not coming from person. It's immutable. So auditors trust this evidence is actual credible, right? And any like if you're wondering like, well, what does a proof file mean? Like it's got metadata. So like, to Lisa's point around AWS console screenshots, that's actually in the PDF documents. So if you need to say, okay, well, prove to the auditor that this came from something, okay, click the link. Now, if the auditor wants to manually go to the system themselves, okay, fine. Hopefully they're being paid by the, well, hopefully you're not paying them by the hour, actually. Two views on that. One is an auditor, one not.
Nice. No, I love this automation. I mean, if I can automate my job away, I would. I would sign up for that. I try to live my security life by this motto of no surprises, and this is true when communicating security to broader audiences and for audits as well, right? If you're only looking at evidence once a year, and that's during the audit, you're bound to run into some of those surprises. Spot checks and spot audits throughout the year, they can help, but the real value I see comes from that continuous monitoring. If you think of like the old days of I'm going to check my firewall rules every 6 months, those control requirements, and how much better it is now with continuous monitoring. Instead of having to pull data, your team just gets notified if something is wrong, if something isn't working, if something is out of compliance. And this, again, frees up your team to build cool security things instead of spinning their wheels performing checks. Or worse, not performing any checks and being surprised when your auditor or your customer discovers that you're out of compliance before you do.
And I'm also seeing some questions come in on the questions. So thank you to those of you who are submitting questions. We're going to take them at the end of today's presentation because we're nearly done. So also we can integrate our task management tools. I mentioned like Jira, but also Asana or ServiceNow. And we can create and assign tasks to people outside of their department. And the task shows up, you create the task in Hyperproof, or it's ideally automatically created, but the task also is generated and tracked in those tools like ServiceNow or Jira or Asana. And any evidence that folks upload to their tasks is going to automatically appear in Hyperproof so that your other stakeholders can work in whatever tools they use as part of their day job. But if you're using Hyperproof primarily to conduct your risk and compliance work, you don't need to try to go out to those other systems and collect information from them. And we also mentioned we allow for control reuse, and that really allows for time savings when we're implementing new frameworks or adapting to regulatory change or managing existing frameworks as a company grows. And control mapping also helps us identify which frameworks we are already making headway towards implementing. And you can use this to quickly add new frameworks, which is useful as your company moves into new markets. As well, you can perform an analysis of your current control set against existing standards, and that means you can avoid auditor fees for readiness assessments or anything like that to see your current state more accurately.
Avoiding fees, yay, speaking my language. And so we're talking about automation and streamlining, and one of the other points we're making here is around security reviews. So I talked about a little bit of the friction of the security review process, but how do we actually make that better? SafeBase automates the security reviews. So the Trust Center, your SafeBase, gives you a seamless portal to automatically do all those things we were talking about for friction, right? Execute NDAs, no more emailing back and forth. It's one click, NDA signed. Tie prospects directly to Salesforce so you know who's asking for this stuff, and you can auto approve them for access if you want to. If I know you and we're talking already in Salesforce, you don't have to ask for access. We've already have that relationship established. Automatically watermarking downloadable documents with the requester's email makes it more difficult for them to share across or post somewhere. You can chat directly with prospects and customers in the app. So no more of that telephone game with the sales team if you want to enable that. Allowing customers and buyers to search your Trust Center for that one thing they're trying to validate. What is SafeBase's RTO time? Type it in, get it. You don't have to scroll through, control find through a SOC report. And finally, through the Trust Center, it's it aims to reduce customer questionnaires, but the platform also offers AI questionnaire assistance to handle those times where questionnaires just can't be avoided. We know they're not going to go away fully. We hope we can reduce them, but when they do come up, we have AI questionnaire assistance to really take the load off of your internal teams filling these out.
And I really like that this reduces the back and forth because, like, having been a buyer before and having sent out security questionnaires, there's just the potential for endless disappointment of like reading somebody's responses and going, huh, you didn't actually read the question there, did you? Or
Yeah.
alternatively, being asked, as Lisa said, the same question dozens of times, where you just end up like building an internal knowledge base, or like I would not. I've seen a lot of internal SharePoint sites that are basically an Excel file that say, if the prospect asks this, copy paste this answer here. We can move past this. I think we can do a lot better.
Yeah. And I'm totally with you. I'm envisioning those Excel spreadsheets that I've had. It's not just about streamlining the questionnaire process, but also about just improving efficiency overall, right? Like without having that redundancy. And with this process in the Trust Center, we can proactively communicate updates with our customers. So, oh, you have a new sub processor? Let me post that to the Trust Center. Let's make it so it actually pushes to everybody who signed up for notifications. Sent, response received, or maybe a public vulnerability, maybe log4j. For example, how many emails I received directly to our security at, like, oh, do you have this? Is it affected you? What are you doing? Use the Trust Center. Just post to update. It's a link people can go to, or if they want to sign up for notifications, they just get it in their inbox. So it really is delivered to them, and our team is proactive, and we're responding before our customers are asking us. So it's overall creating that trust and establishing more of that trust. Again, follow-up questions right there in the platform. No need to go out of band. No need to like go look in 10 other places. Did I respond to so-and-so? Is the salesperson taking care of this one? And one of my favorite things, of course, in my CISO world, the metrics, right? Is anyone actually looking at my SOC 2 report that my team is spending all these cycles on? What are my customers asking me about most? Are they searching? Are they even searching my Trust Center maybe for something I don't have? Should I have that thing? All of that visibility. So kind of going back to this no surprises and radical transparency philosophies, the Trust Center provides that visibility and participation across organizational units. So not only are your security and compliance efforts visible and easily accessible to external parties, that information is now at the fingertips of internal stakeholders. So your sales team can self-serve common questions that maybe they're getting around security and compliance. Doesn't take like 2 days for them to, let me go ask the security team and get back to you. These badges, on our trust centers, and we all have, some sort of compliance mechanism in place, I imagine, they're not because, we just put them up there for fun. Our customers demand that we're in compliance with industry standards and regulations. And in this day and age, these really are just table stakes.
Yeah, and I think also it's necessary to have your security team and your compliance team communicate this up to the executive team, because often there are questions of, why do we have these things? Like, why do we have this thing on our website that says we have a SOC 2? Or what's the value of complying with the GDPR? Or what's the value of like whatever you have? And if you can tie that narratively to top line revenue, rather than, well, we have it because some customers told us we needed to have it, like, sure, that's a fine story, but tell them in numbers, like, because what executives tend to care about is either time or money. And so a friend of mine actually has told the story of, like, people will ask them about their top security controls, because their top security controls are people, processes, and technology. That's not cheap to operate. And they ask, well, why do we have to do this? And the response comes back, well, do you like $500 million? Well, what do you mean? Well, the revenue associated with these controls and this specific attestation that they have is worth about $500 million a year. Would you not like to have that $500 million anymore? Oh, no, you don't? Okay, cool. So you probably want to have these controls. Shut up and move on. And I think having that ability to quickly associate, this produces revenue. This is not just some bill that comes due when renewals come due, or that we have to staff for. I think that really helps enshrine cybersecurity as a profit capability rather than just a cost center for businesses.
Yeah, I really love this tying to revenue and showing the value, that, we're not just, yeah, exactly to your point, like this isn't just what our customers are asking us for, this is driving revenue, and being able to demonstrate that here. And it really does deepen that customer trust as well. So we're, leveraging the security to deepen the customer trust and being proactive rather than reactive. So we're proactively sharing that information, whether it's with our executives or with our customers, and we're prioritizing transparency and clear communication with our trust centers and this automation. So we're removing and automating these manual processes like responding to those emails from each customer. So again, going back to this this concept of ROI, I think this is really important. So we're doing the hard work. We're taking the time. It's time that we brag a little bit, right, about how we're reaching this ROI and what our security team, compliance teams are giving back to the business. And part of that is from the analytics that we can provide. So SafeBase also helps us make these data-driven decisions to improve our program and positioning as a business driver. So understanding, for example, document engagement helps me better tune what my team should be spending time on. If customers aren't looking at like my cake questionnaire, maybe I don't need to showcase that at the top of my trust center, for example. If every customer is clicking on my SOC 2 report, let's put that at the top of the trust center. So this view of GRC influence, close to win deals with revenue dashboards, the security team influenced this sale, potential buyer A interacted with our trust center and didn't ask for a questionnaire. How many times does that happen? And you can see that over and over, and the value that your trust center and the work that your team is doing is bringing.
And the other point I want to bring out is we really can't hire our way out of compliance and security challenges. I'd say businesses at this point need to automate these processes to scale, which is why leveraging technology is going to be the most straightforward way to achieve these business needs. And I say that because in our 2024 IT risk and compliance report, respondents who had the least mature programs, they had larger teams. They spent the most time doing those things that we didn't like doing, like manually collecting evidence and struggling with it. But they were also spending the majority of their budget on headcount. They weren't actually strategically addressing the risks of their businesses. They were just trying to like hire their way out of a problem. They didn't realize they had a shovel and that they were still digging. Hyperproof and SafeBase both promote collaboration within and across teams. And we talked about earlier, like we do this through our integrations with task management, continuous evidence collection, comprehensive compliance management, so on. And SafeBase provides that trust center where all of that security information is centrally accessible, which really enhances the visibility for both your internal and external parties. And the platform, as Lisa said, there are analytics and dashboards that show, here's what people care about, right? You're not going to get that if you try and hire your way out of this problem. It's just not going to work like that. And you won't be able to spend your time on strategic initiatives if you're trying to do this manually.
I'm like, I've tried to do this. I feel called out. I've definitely tried to hire my way out of these problems and not really looking at how can I make it better and improve the process. I've had at least one full-time person at different phases of my career assigned to completing questionnaires, right? I've outsourced questionnaires to a third party, and none of it gets better, right? It's always this ever-ending knowledge base that is wildly out of control knowledge base, and all these tools to answer these questionnaires, everything's out of date. So I feel like I've lived this pain and I feel called out. Thank you. So, right. Enough of my complaining. Yeah. Getting comprehensive and full picture of our security compliance program that really makes sense for our business as opposed to one size fits all approach, I think is what the comments we're making here too, right? This is actually what my customers want to see. So having that sort of customized view, it really is like winning the CISO lottery for me. Our systems and security of those systems, they're intricate. They're complex, and there are so many standards and controls and requirements. So having visibility into what my customers want, what they're looking for, what mechanisms work best for demonstrating that is invaluable. Without that context, we're back to the old like spray and hope days where we just plaster all the security things on a dashboard and hope for the best. Like just show everything we can. And I think in these instances, quality is better than quantity, and understanding our business and the ability to customize how we demonstrate security is invaluable there. So together, again, platforms like Hyperproof and SafeBase help us manage and promote our security profile. They're creating this single source of truth for compliance and risk management, and it means to proactively showcase our strong security posture to buyers and customers.
So with that, I want to thank the audience for taking some time today to participate in today's webinar. We've got a couple minutes from questions, so I want to take some of the questions we had out of the audience here. And Lisa, I'll put this one to you first. And the question is, what are some strategies you found effective in encouraging prospects or customers to use trust centers instead of filling out security questionnaires?
I think just trying it out. If you've ever been on either side of this, just going to a trust center and having a look around and realizing how easy it is to find the information you need. And even if you're just starting out and you're like a small company, or you're a large enterprise and you're not sure what you would put out there, just having, trying some things out and seeing some metrics and saying, oh yeah, our SOC 2 is out here. We're always getting these questions. Let's put those out there. And then you can start building and customizing. But honestly, even just being like reviewing our third parties, being able to click on a trust center, I'm just bypassing all of the, like, let me reach out to you and ask for this thing and then wait for an email and wait for it to be approved. And like my life's so much easier. It's just like click, click, click. Okay, done. We can move on. We can pay you. We just want to give you our money.
Definitely. Okay, and that's a great audience question. A couple more have come in since then. So again, thank you to the audience for asking questions. I've got a few more minutes left. So I'm going to take this next one, although I would be interested in, Lisa, in hearing your perspective on it. About the question is, what initial steps would you recommend for organizations looking to automate the collection of control effectiveness data? And so my way of looking at this is, before you go doing tool selection for how do we automate all of this, or before you think to yourself, oh, I could write a script for this in Python, which is a terrible idea, I'd encourage folks to figure out what are the systems that their business cares about the most. Like, what is it that is in your disaster recovery plan? What are the top 5 systems that need to come back online? Right? Straight up, what are those systems? And then what are those systems built out of? And this is even if you don't have a corporate risk register, which some companies don't, or they don't have a cyber risk register. But start with that inventory and figure out, what are those systems made out of? Because if those are the systems that the business cares the most, that need to come online following a disaster, then those are the systems that I'd say you want to monitor the controls for the most. Because if those controls are not operating, or are operating ineffectively, I'd say that you probably have a higher risk of those systems going offline, whether unintentionally or intentionally from a threat actor. And consequently, that's where you start building, okay, we have these systems, they're made out of these components, the business cares about them. What can we collect out of these automatically? What of our controls can we map back? And then, is there a platform, is there a system that actually allows us to ingest those? But don't just go with like, oh, it gets a screenshot, but a human has to look at it. Like, we are so far past that point. Look and say like, hey, is there a way to actually build a test to determine if this control is successful, if it's partially successful, or if it's failing? And then in those cases where it's, partially failing or just straight up failed, is there already a way to notify somebody that it's gone and like failed? Because if we don't have those capabilities, we still have these manual processes that introduce friction and they introduce risk because there's delay. And if there's one thing we've seen, I'm a regular Verizon data breach investigation report reader. They always talk about dwell time of threat actors, about how long systems can, have a threat actor on them for And what becomes a differentiator is how fast a company can remediate deficiencies. Well, if we've automated the inspection of a control being operated, and if we've automated the filing of, oh, this thing fell over, go fix it, please, we really are shortening the amount of potential dwell time that a threat actor could have due to a control deficiency, or if it's not a adversarial threat actor, the other thing you're doing is you're really reducing the business risk associated with the disaster, because if those controls are failing, odds are they're not going to come back online. So having that earlier visibility as a CISO certainly makes me feel more comfortable when I'm going to go talk to the board. Lisa, do you have anything on this
Yeah.
one?
No, I love your perspective, because my initial thought on this one was to go straight to, well, first of all, don't try to eat the whole elephant thing, right? Like, you can tackle this in tiny bits. But I kind of approach this when we're looking at what would I automate first. I would say, like, what is my biggest pain point? Like, what's the thing that's most annoying for me? It's kind of how I approach, like, oh, I have a problem to solve, or I want to learn how to code this certain thing, or like solve this problem. Finding something I'm passionate about kind of drives me to learn the thing. So I feel like same with this, with automation. If I find something that's really annoying me, that's like difficult to do, that's the thing I want to automate first. I'm like, this is painful and annoying, and I never want to log into this thing again. Let's automate this guy, because I
Sounds
don't
like
ever have to tackle
AWS
him.
consoles for you, just based on
I
the
said nothing of
conversation
the
you and I
sort.
had. Okay, okay, okay. All right.
But maybe it is those screenshots, right? Those, like, why am I doing this
Why does
over and over
anybody?
again?
Yep. All right. Well, we've got time for one more audience question. These have been great audience questions. Really want to thank everyone for participating. Lisa, I'll have you take this one at the top, and then I might weigh in on it. And the
Yeah,
question is,
please.
in your experience, how do trust centers contribute to reducing third-party risks?
Ooh, I like it. I think, it's reducing security through obscurity. And I kind of mentioned radical transparency. It's forcing us as CISOs and, as security communities we should be talking about what security is and how we're doing that, and maybe sharing information with each other so we can all be better at this. And if there's something I can't put on my trust center, I should be asking myself as a leader, like, why can't I? Like, why can't I be transparent about that? And sometimes it's for a good reason. Maybe it's like an active incident, or, something that's super proprietary, fine. But mostly the answer to that is like, I don't really have a good story for that. And why? Why don't I? What should I be changing? It really makes us look internally. We can't just like hide behind, it's a check mark because I passed the thing. It
Mhm.
really provides that visibility. And I think that's the direction we need to go more and more.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add on to this is back when I used to do executive advisory work, most CISOs care about cohort analysis because their boards care about cohort analysis. And that's a fancy way of saying you don't want to be at the front of the pack, you don't want to be at the back of the pack. You kind of want to be in the happy, mushy middle within your industry peers, within your vertical, within your size of company, whatever metrics you want to have. That's generally what folks care about, like when it comes down to funding requests, that they're not spending too little or they're not spending too much. And one way of doing that actually is by looking at, well, do your competitors have trust centers up? What do their trust centers say? What are they doing? And where are they coming in from a cybersecurity perspective? And that really allows CISOs to have an easier narrative to show, hey, I am doing a reasonable set of things that is expected within my industry. Or alternatively, if you want to become an industry leader, if you want to actually showcase, hey, the reason you're more trustworthy as a business is because you have additional attestations or certifications that you can loudly and proudly communicate and have your go-to-market team promote. That gives you a way of, now this is a deliberate lean in, like the board and the senior executives, they have to be like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. That's a strategic capability for us. That's where you can showcase that. And then you've moved ahead of the pack, and everybody else can either decide like, hey, do we want to keep up with them, or are they going to just cede that part of the business to you? So with that, I think we've hit time. I want to thank everyone. Lisa, it's been fun chatting with you today. I want to
Yeah,
thank
thanks
the
so
audience
much.
for participating today. If you want more information about us, I will say hyperproof.io. If you want to follow me on social media, I am, thanks Mom and Dad, I am the only Kane McGladry in the world. Do a quick Google, you will only find me. Lisa, how do folks find you?
Yes, well, safebase.io, and on LinkedIn, if you just look at Lisa Hall, I will probably be one of the people you find there.
Fantastic. With that, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks so much.